Otis, after that, went to Erasmus, ran through the ranks, completely through the ranks, all the way up to dean at the school. He was dean there for a long, long time, probably longer than he wanted to be. And then retired from that in 2007. I couldn't find a good CV either. And so then went on to KICS in Asheville. He's director at KICS, which is Cooperative Institute for Climate Studies, NOAA Cooperative Institute. I'll do the same thing with Bob, as long as Bob was also at Erasmus, and the combination of the two are basically leaders in satellite sea surface temperature measurements, and developed, made Miami and Erasmus the leaders in satellite remote sensing for many years. So I'll let Otis say the rest of what he wants to do.
Thank you very much. Everybody hear me all right without microphone? This will be a little different because what hit me as I was thinking about, should this be a science review or what? So it's clear, I think, from what you've seen today in terms of the scientific contributions that happened when Howard took me on as a graduate student. There's a part of this, though, that may not be so clear, particularly for the students. I think it's really important. I met Howard as a second-year graduate student in the Department of Physics in 1968 when I was starting to consider a dissertation project. At that time, UM had strong physics competence in plasma physics, solid-state physics, optics, and with, as you've heard, an emergent interest in ocean optics with Howard, among other specialties. This perplexed me a little bit because as graduate students are wont, I went and said, well, where did he, I knew he came from William and Mary, but his PhD's in infrared spectroscopy, what's this about? So, but he had a joint appointment with what was then, I think, called physical and chemical oceanography in the Marine Lab, as it was then known. And his goal was to improve understanding of the role of particles in the upper ocean light field, at least as I understood it at the time. But it was really upper ocean radiated transfer. An aside, while the topic was interesting, as was the opportunity to work in the ocean, I thought, I was concerned about what sort of advisor mentor he might be, because several of my friends had had advisors who were, let's say, very difficult to work with, and they had told me, if they'd had it to do all over again, maybe they would have made a different choice. And so it's a much more important criteria than I would have initially thought. And so I wanted to understand, how was this sociology going to work? The deal was effectively sealed from my perspective when he told me, you have one priority, do your research. If anyone gives you any trouble, send them to me. And that's how it worked, actually, or at least I thought it did. He provided a nice umbrella for the routine day-to-day things, and all I had to do was worry about being productive. I decided this sounded exactly like the sort of mentor I wanted. In fact, it was the way that things worked for the next 5 years. Howard was fun to work with on my dissertation, as well as you can see from what you've heard already today. He was full of lots of other ideas to keep me challenged. He was a partner who let me decide what needed to be done, which is not to say he didn't have advice at times when I was stuck or needed a course correction. And the biggest benefit on the side was he got me an office at Virginia Keys, so I got to move out of the shacks. This was like two moves ago for the physics department here. This building did not exist, and they actually were not in under either at that point. My dissertation project was to develop and validate an approach for the forward calculation of the optical effects of suspended particles in salt water. titled A Study of Light Scattering by Ocean-Borne Particulates. It had 4 components: a rigorous mathematical formulation, direct observation of particle size distribution functions, computer codes to generate the expected bulk optical observables, and comparison of expected and observed results. And surprisingly enough, and this is again a comment about most graduate students, you don't know what you can't do. So you say, oh, that sounds okay to me. Major point, and that's one of the reasons I think being a graduate student is so much fun, because you haven't learned to be risk averse yet. And so you take on projects that in many cases are much bigger than anything someone should do in 5 years or 3 years. And thus started our journey into Lorentz mean theory of spherical scattering, measurement of suspended particulates with Henri Bader, measurement of scattering functions of particulates in the lab and in situ, and you saw one of our famous instruments already today, and a significant amount of computer calculations. Henri Bader was not only a good scientist, but he was an iconoclast. I can remember seeing him measuring suspended particulates with a Coulter counter at sea. This is mid-morning, mind you, in pajamas with slippers and a suit coat on, because it was cold in the lab. Completely oblivious to any sense of dress code or anyone else around him, actually. It was also where I learned that being on board ship was an excellent learning and research environment. Truly, you are all in the same boat. And I learned, that's actually, Barney, where I was really introduced to ocean biology, because they were right next to me. And, what were you doing? Why were you doing it? As time passed, I also got involved in Coulter counter calibration and simulation of its operation with Henri, optical instrument characterization and Monte Carlo simulation of optical fields with Howard, and some wonderful field experiences in the tongue of the ocean at High K with Howard, Henri, and Larry Mertens, who was then chief scientist at RC International and the lead for something called the Deep Look Project, which, for reasons that to this day were never explained, when they did certain things, we got escorted to a different part of the barge. And one night, I noticed there was a diver about, I guess 50, 60 feet under the barge. They had an argon laser illuminating measurement of scattering functions of particulate in the lab and in situ, and you saw one of our famous instruments already today, and a significant amount of computer calculations. Henri Bader was not only a good scientist, but he was an iconoclast. I can remember seeing him measuring suspended particulates with a Coulter counter at sea. This is mid-morning, mind you, in pajamas with slippers and a suit coat on, because it was cold in the lab. Completely oblivious to any sense of dress code or anyone else around him, actually. It was also where I learned that being on board ship was an excellent learning and research environment. Truly, you are all in the same boat. And I learned, that's actually, Barney, where I was really introduced to ocean biology, because they were right next to me. And, what were you doing? Why were you doing it? As time passed, I also got involved in Coulter counter calibration and simulation of its operation with Henri, optical instrument characterization and Monte Carlo simulation of optical fields with Howard, and some wonderful field experiences in the tongue of the ocean at High K with Howard, Henri, and Larry Mertens, who was then chief scientist at RC International and the lead for something called the Deep Look Project, which, for reasons that to this day were never explained, when they did certain things, we got escorted to a different part of the barge. And one night, I noticed there was a diver about, I guess 50, 60 feet under the barge. They had an argon laser illuminating various material in the water, and we got to watch a shark swim through the beam, and the diver quickly came up. This work, though, led to a paper, the size refractive index distribution of clear coastal water particulates from light scattering. And this is the other part that's important, and Howard, true to his mentoring style, always for these sorts of publications in the early part of the dissertation work, put his students as the first author. I didn't realize how unusual this was until much later. Thank you for that. My time as a graduate student was one of the most scientifically productive and rewarding periods, as you can tell from the number of publications you've seen that happened over about a 4.5 or 5 year period. Howard made sure that I had sufficient variety and sufficient income. Not great, but continuous. In 1973, actually, Howard had to sit me down and explain that I had to defend. That's why I was the second graduate student, because I was enjoying it too much. I just couldn't keep working as a graduate student, he told me. You know, there were other things I had to do. I wasn't so sure of that, but that was the advice. It was a shock, as I considered my life to be perfect. I knew what I had to do in terms of research. I knew what my schedule was, and as you can tell, the publications were rolling out one after another. I decided to take a postdoctoral fellowship in physical oceanography at the Rosenstiel School, which eventually led to a faculty appointment, and it was all downhill from there. Howard Gordon's abilities to guide and mentor me as a student have stayed with me my entire career. Moreover, I've tried to have the same relationship with students and postdocs because it just sets up a wonderful dynamic where everybody can learn. And everything is interesting and new every day. And it is the way to do research. Howard Gordon, from my perspective, combines the traits of being a good person, a great scientist, a great mentor, and a good friend. It's unusual and hard to beat, and it's hard to believe your retirement. Thank you for all you've done for me, for the university, and for the oceanographics community. I wish you the best. And although I know you and I have somehow come to the same feeling about being on research vessels, he ended up at one point, I had 120 days on a ship in a year, and I decided maybe I had to start looking at satellite remote sensing. But fair winds, following seas in your retirement. Thank you.
There are many.
After Otis was working.
Can you get that, please, Howard?
Yeah, oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, come on.
After Otis was working with me for about a year, of course, Otis was doing all the computer work. I didn't know anything about computers. So Otis says, oh, by the way, I'm leaving for the summer. So you're leaving? He said, yeah, Bob and I are going to Houston. He worked at the Space Flight Center there in Houston. I said, okay, but I don't know anything about computers. I said, well, I guess you're going to have to learn. So Otis made me learn about computers. And the other thing that it really warms my heart to hear what Otis said, because that was exactly the relationship I had with my thesis advisor at Penn State. He basically ran interference, and all I had to do was work. And I loved everything. Thanks.
go ahead.
Picking up the second half of the story, probably you've noticed Otis and I have worked together for seemingly eons. I mean, Juan had put up a picture of, just coming up to graduation. Noticed Howard and I were in shorts, he was in the pond. Well, going along with that, Howard comes up to me in his lunch and says, "Well, Papa, I have never seen you in long pants in Miami during summer." So, no ties, but long pants. The other thing is, unfortunately, there are not too many students here now, but one of the things that is a recurring theme throughout the various talks is how much the communities work together and how much, we collectively try to, assist in solving each other's problems, which is manifest. When we started, it was honest to God, nothing to work with. Well, picking up on the Otis and Bob story, we met and started our undergraduate work back in 1962, which is quite as old as some of our seniors here, but acceptably close to it. And as you know now, Otis came south. I stayed in North Carolina State to do my graduate work. As Howard just mentioned, Otis went away during the summertime. Actually, that work with Houston continued throughout the year for many years. And the other thing I wanted to mention that also has recurred a number of times in this talk is how much serendipity is played with how we have collectively come together, and a lot of the right solutions to the problems were emerging exactly at the right time. Well, for Otis and myself, two of the projects that we worked on down in Houston really sort of set the foundation. One was NASA had this aircraft sensor, and we were asked to see if we could provide an analysis program for it. And that sensor was the prototype for the Landsat chromatic mapping. So, corresponding with this, the Air Force had just folded their manned orbited lab program, and we were able to inherit some of the capabilities that they had. So along with that, we had this little microcomputer which was supposed to run the thing, and it was called 4Pi. And the 4Pi became the IBM's predecessor for the IBM 360 systems and so forth. And coming along with that was a very primitive early color image display, all done with video delay line, basically no electronics. But very importantly, we were able to take some of the imagery coming off of this Landsat simulator and actually see Earth remote sensing imagery. And that kind of set some interest. Well, kind of that as background, then we were into grad school. Otis had the good sense of coming down to Miami and meeting Howard. And I stayed on, as I said, at NC State, was doing modeling of material properties. But one of my co-advisors was doing some research in digital image display systems. So this also was one of those serendipitous things. So we moved along a little bit. Otis and I both graduated. And in the process of sort of leading up to that, a couple of things that also happened. One was faced with the harsh winters of North Carolina, and just being down here in the nice summer south, or warm, sunny south. Why don't I just go down to Miami and spend a little time with Otis? So I did. I came down. Otis introduced me to Howard. They were getting involved in their Monte Carlo calculation. And it just happened that I was able to assist them by putting in a much more efficient search algorithm that made the Monte Carlo work a lot more attractive. And then, as was mentioned by Ross, they were going out to the Gulf Stream to make some optical measurements. And I thought, going out on the ship might be an interesting thing to do. Otis / Howard, he could get me onto that ship. So he did, and I went out and learned a little bit about the oceanography, learned a little bit about being at sea and what physical oceanography was doing. And the principal investigator for that cruise is Walter Dewey, a very noted physical oceanographer. And then several years past that, there was a large multinational experiment in the Atlantic, and we were on the equatorial part of that. So this is it's called the GATE program, which is the Dark Atlantic Tropical Experiment. And this was a very interesting thing to do, so I was out there for a number of weeks. And after coming back from that cruise, Walter offered me a position in faculty of physical oceanography. So Otis had just started at Rasmus, and here I'm an electrical engineering graduate. What does an electrical engineering graduate do to help out with oceanography, especially physical oceanography? Well, harkening back to our experience at Houston, and since we were both young, starting off graduate student, or in this case faculty members, and Otis had mentioned earlier, by being as a graduate, he wasn't really acquainted with the limitations of what he could and couldn't do. Same thing you faced us, in this case, didn't face us with being new faculty members. So what can we do? Well, let's start a program in satellite oceanography. It didn't exist, so let's go do it. So what do you need to do this? Well, you need a computer, you need an image display, you need some data, and you need this entire software algorithm analysis environment. Well, lo and behold, the ships were coming back from the GATE experiment, and as part of the instrumentation for that, there was this PDP 1120 computer on board one of the ships. To give you an idea, it had 56 kilobytes of memory. Its arithmetic capability was adding and subtracting integers. So, as it's been said, what you could do with computer in that era was very limited. But I went out, when the ships were coming in, made acquaintance with a forklift operator, and lo and behold, next week we had a computer. So this is part and parcel of not knowing what's not possible. So then I thought about my co-advisor up in NC State, and we struck up a collaboration and built an image display system. So this is, everything is started off with whole cloth, creating stuff absolutely scratch. As with the physical measurements we had from the GATE program, Otis and I went out to the University of Wisconsin, got a hold of some GOES data for the IR channels, and we had data to work with. And we created then the ESP analysis system, which really provided us the ability to calibrate, navigate, analyze, and actually work with the general data. And over the longer run, this actually provided the foundation for getting the Goddard Ocean Biology Project up and running. That was their first system as well. So you can start to really see a lot of these different aspects coming together. Well, this is back before Ocean Color. Otis and I started with the sea surface temperature. We went from dealing with the onesies on the images to eventually do global time series of data. And sort of hand in hand with all this is when Howard was getting involved with the Nimbus experiment team, SNET team, and the Coastal Color Scanner. And he ran full face into what it was like to try to process or not process into the data using this algorithm of Goddard. So Howard came over to Rasmus and started a really productive and really wonderful collaboration between the many global joint publications that arose from this. So like with the SSD data, we started off with the onesies of the CCCS. One of the very first images of the process was of June 14, 1979, or 1326. And looking at the total radiance, it was absolutely featureless. I mean, it's just a great log, except for this very intense H1 that's coming down the east coast of the United States. And the other thing that sort of happened during this time, Otis' brother Jim had started working as another one of our graduate students. Jim, Howard, Otis, and I implemented Howard's semi-analytic atmospheric pressure scheme with his DSP system. And I remember all of us sitting around the monitor when that image started first processing. And here's this featureless gray blob out there. And from underneath that emerges this absolutely spectacular image of all the intricate oceanographic interactions between shelf, slope waters, Sargasso Sea, Gulf Stream, and it was just really amazing how you could take nothing and turn it into something that just had so many different interesting aspects. So we were off and running, except for little details about the calibration, et cetera, et cetera. So how do we deal with that? Well, fortunately, Dennis Clark has been mentioned a number of times today, had a series of net cruises, and he was taking the in situ data. And Howard was using that in situ observations from Dennis to tie into the atmospheric correcting data and produce the initial CCCS calibration. So that took care of data in 1979. Along comes 1982 with the warm chlorine cruises, and Ray Smith was there with another set of in situ measurements. Keep in mind that we had the 14 data points out of this totality, and working towards the lifetime of the CCCS mission. 14 data points, essentially a couple of week time scales, was not going to, really take it to provide a nice, continuous, well-calibrated ocean color time series. So how do we go about that? Well, some other work, the Clearwater Radius paper of Dennis and Howard's been mentioned, was basically in lower chlorophyll waters, the radius of 550 nanometers is very, very constant. You can take advantage of that as one hinge point. Fortunately for the CCCS, it was fairly stable in the red, so we can kind of take advantage of that. And then since we had our little PDP-11 there, it was sort of being augmented a little bit as time went on. We could actually process the entire CCCS time series over and over again. And if you look at histograms of either the total or water leaving radius, you can see the principal mode of these things kind of winding down with lower and lower radiuses. So we said, let's just assume that this is fairly consistent over time. And this ad hoc approach was what led to the overall mission calibration for CCCS. And thinking about, as we were approaching the CWIF's era leading on to future satellites, there had to be a better way of doing business. And fortunately, along with many discussions with Dennis proposed and had funded the marine optical buoy system that's also been talked about. So this provided the mainstay of more rigorous in situ calibration. And then other thoughts, such as the lunar calibration, which started to lead to discussions on what kind of attributes do you need in either the sensor or the satellite to permit this. So you begin to see some, how do you define what the system characteristics of the future ocean color systems, what should they have? Well, besides this, there was this nagging of a problem about how you would conduct atmospheric correction. So in the beginning, again, pulling back on clear water correction, we would calculate epsilon as an indicator of what kind of aerosols were present. And we would do this maybe 1 point for an image, but if you want to process global data, you can't really do that. So we need something that's a little bit more robust and we can apply on a pixel by pixel basis across all the images that the sensors acquire. So how do you do this? Well, probably some of you don't know this, but the original CWIS instrument channel configuration had 6 visible bands, 2 infrared bands, because the ocean color and biological community wanted to have an ocean color and temperature time series so that we could do all the other applications. Well, there was a number, this is also back in the United States, sort of like the open western frontier. People talk to one another, and a lot of interaction with those industry guys and the academic agency. So there was a meeting up in Columbia, Maryland, where some of these initial things were discussed. And I made the proposition, let's drop the IR band and instead include the 700 or 800 nanometer bands as Nick White has mentioned. So I gave rise to the 765 and 865 nanometer bands and gave us this more universal ability to do atmospheric correction. And that thought pattern has continued since it was down. So that more or less is a combination of Dennis's work, Howard's work. Many of the people that are here today have also contributed to aspects of what the algorithms should contain, and each one of those things is broadening the various regimes, whether it's atmospheric, oceanographic, instrument, where we can obtain quantifiable ocean color data and have some confidence in what it is that we're looking at. So this more or less now is the set of backgrounds that we have as we were going forward and moving into the new instrument. The capabilities of the earlier semi-analytic model were expanded and went from single scattered to multiple scattered array. Polarization was added, whitecaps were added, etc. Other people's algorithms like Barney's complex and so forth were added. And then, with both people that are here, some of our dear colleagues that are not anymore, like Dennis Clark with his Moten stuff, Kenneth carrying that forward, Andre Morales, another who suggested that we use per pixel ozone as being another one of these variables that influence the calculation of clear water radiance. And certainly Charlie Yentz with some of his C2 algorithm. So this has really been a very dynamic time to watch the evolution of this very fledgling enterprise called Ocean Color, how it has evolved over time, and now we're at the point where many diverse fields are using ocean color data routinely in their applications. So gone from something that's almost like, can you differentiate with a CCCS between a very low chlorophyll, a very high chlorophyll, to a very robust quantitative environment. So I think in closing, with Howard, it's been a real honor to be able to work with you over the years, and also how communally we've been able to collectively advance both ocean color and sea surface temperature algorithms.